The unthinkable, a family's silence broken, a nation's trust shattered. The story of Tyler Robinson is not merely a true crime narrative, it is a profound and unsettling parable for modern America. It is a story that fractures our foundational beliefs about family, identity, and the very nature of evil. It challenges the comforting notion that we can truly know another human being, even one we have raised from infancy. On September 10, 2025, the life of Tyler Robinson, a quiet young man from the tightly knit community of St. George, Utah, collided with the national consciousness in the most violent and shocking way imaginable. His assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk at Utah Valley University was an act that sent seismic waves through the political landscape of the United States. But the subsequent, heartbreaking decision by his own family to turn him into authorities created a different kind of shockwave, one of moral complexity, unimaginable sacrifice, and a desperate search for answers in the ruins of a life they thought they understood. This is the story of that decision. It is a painstaking reconstruction of the final hours of Tyler's freedom, the chilling digital footprint he left behind, and the agonizing moral calculus his family was forced to perform. It is an exploration of the dark corners of the internet where radicalization festers, an examination of how the face of a killer can be the same face that smiled for family holiday photos. The Robinson family, once the embodiment of quiet, conservative American values, now finds itself at the center of a national tragedy, breaking their silence not for sympathy, but as a cautionary tale and a final, painful act of civic duty. The portrait of normalcy, St. George and the Robinson family. To understand the profundity of the shock, one must first understand the environment from which Tyler emerged. St. George, Utah, is not a breeding ground for political assassins. Nestled in the red rock landscapes of southern Utah, it is a community deeply rooted in faith, family, and tradition. A stronghold of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the city prides itself on its safety, its strong communal bonds, and its conservative values. Neighbors know each other, children are raised with a shared set of principles, and life often revolves around family gatherings, church activities, and respect for institutions. Within this community, the Robinson family was not an outlier, they were a prototype. Matt and Sarah Robinson were pillars of their local ward, registered Republicans who had supported Donald Trump and embodied the quiet, hard-working ethos of their community. They raised their children, Tyler being the eldest, with an emphasis on respect, education, and kindness. Their social media profiles painted a picture of an all-American family, vacations to national parks, children participating in school events, holiday celebrations filled with extended family, and expressions of patriotic pride. Tyler, by all accounts, was a product of this environment. Described universally as quiet, smart, and mellow, he was the kind of child who faded into the background in the best possible way. He was not a troublemaker, he was polite to his elders, performed well academically, and seemed to navigate adolescence without the typical storms of rebellion. His grandmother, 69-year-old Debbie Robinson, would become the first voice to articulate the family's disbelief, painting a portrait of a grandson she perceived as fundamentally gentle and apolitical. There's no way he could be violent. There's absolutely no way that he did that, she would later insist, her voice trembling with a grandmother's desperate conviction. I've watched that child grow up, and I can't imagine that it would ever be him. And I'm not just saying that as his grandma. It's just knowing him as I do. He's the shyest person. This image of Tyler, the non-confrontational, almost passive young man, would become the central pillar of the family's confusion. It was an image so firmly entrenched that it would blind them to the subtle shifts occurring beneath the surface. 2. The cracks beneath the surface. The genesis of a transformation. Behavioral psychologists and experts in radicalization would later assert that transformations like Tyler's rarely happen overnight. They are more akin to a slow-motion geological shift, where pressure builds imperceptibly over time until a catastrophic rupture occurs. The family, in their hindsight, would begin to recall minor details that seemed insignificant in isolation but formed a pattern when viewed through the tragic lens of subsequent events. Tyler's quietness, once seen as a personality trait, began to be reinterpreted as potential withdrawal. His time spent alone in his room, common for any teenager, was now understood to have been dominated by his online life. While the family's dinner table conversations might have touched on mainstream conservative politics, Tyler was diving deep into digital subcultures far removed from the Fox News discourse of his parents. He was frequenting encrypted forums, engaging with extremist content on social media platforms, and immersing himself in a world where political disagreement was framed not as a difference of opinion, but as an existential war between good and evil. This digital radicalization represents a modern epidemic. Unlike the ideological recruitment of past eras, which often required physical interaction and formal indoctrination, Tyler's transformation occurred in the anonymous, algorithm-driven echo chambers of the Internet. Here, extreme views are normalized, reinforced, and gamified. Vitriol is packaged as humor through memes, calls to violence are couched in irony, and complex political realities are reduced to simplistic, us versus them narratives. Tyler, a smart and seemingly impressionable young man, was a perfect candidate for this kind of manipulation. His natural quietness may have masked a deep desire for belonging and purpose, which he found not in his community or family, but in these digital tribes. The family's Republican credentials, which Debbie Robinson emphasized so strongly, my son, his dad, is a Republican for Trump. Most of my family members are Republican, likely played a complex role. It may have created a dynamic where Tyler felt he could not express his burgeoning and opposing political views at home for fear of rejection or conflict. Rather than engaging in arguments that might have exposed the extremity of his positions, he retreated further into his online world, where his views were validated. This created a dangerous duality: the polite son at the dinner table, and the radicalized ideologue in his digital life. 3. The Last Supper, September 9, 2025. The family gathering on the evening of September 9, 2025, has since taken on a mythical, almost sacred quality in the Robinson family narrative. It represents the last moment of normalcy, the final time they would interact with the son and brother they believed they knew. It was a seemingly ordinary event, a meal shared, conversations had. But the topic of Charlie Kirk's scheduled speaking event the next day at Utah Valley University, just a few hours' drive north, ignited a fuse, according to accounts later provided by family members to investigators. The mention of Kirk's name triggered a dramatic shift in Tyler's demeanor. The quiet, reserved facade cracked open to reveal a startling depth of hatred. His family witnessed a venom in his voice they had never heard before. He declared that Kirk was full of hate and was spreading hate, language that, while strong, did not yet cross the line into explicit threats. To his conservative family, who may have disagreed with some of Kirk's tactics but broadly agreed with his political stance, this outburst was shocking and confusing. It was a glimpse behind the curtain, but they tragically misinterpreted what they saw. They saw a son expressing a passionate, albeit disagreeable, political opinion. They did not see an assassin finalizing his plans in his mind. What makes this evening so hauntingly significant is its timing. While his family saw this as an uncharacteristic outburst, unbeknownst to them, Tyler was likely already deep into the operational phase of his plot. As he sat at the dinner table, engaging in this heated political discussion, he may have already secured the weapon, planned his route, and researched the venue. The family's conversation, for him, might not have been a debate but a form of perverse validation, a confirmation that his targets were indeed the enemies he believed them to be. The chasm between the family's perception of the event and Tyler's reality is the central tragedy of that night. 4. The digital conspiracy, meticulous planning in plain sight. In the hours immediately following the family dinner, Tyler's transformation from radicalized individual to active operative was completed. The digital evidence recovered by investigators paints a chilling picture of meticulous, cold, and calculated preparation. This evidence completely dismantles the narrative of a spontaneous act of passion or a mentally unstable individual snapping. This was a premeditated assassination, planned with a level of technical competence that stunned law enforcement. Central to understanding this period is Tyler's relationship with his roommate and romantic partner, Lance Twiggs, a 22-year-old transgender individual. Their shared living space and intimate relationship provided Tyler with a degree of insulation from his family's scrutiny. While Twiggs has been fully cooperative with authorities and was apparently unaware of the murder plot, their shared digital communications became a goldmine for investigators. Through platforms like Discord, Tyler detailed his final preparations in a series of messages that are remarkable for their clinical detachment. These were not the ramblings of a fanatic but the checklists of a technician. The messages included instructions on weapon logistics, retrieving a rifle from a prearranged drop point, leaving it concealed in a bush, and visually monitoring the area to ensure it remained hidden. Preparation, specific references to wrapping the rifle in a towel to protect it and avoid detection. Execution planning, discussions about using a scope for accuracy and plans to change clothing to evade identification and forensic detection. This methodical approach extended to the very ammunition he would use. The bullet casings recovered at the crime scene were engraved with messages, a bizarre fusion of internet meme culture and violent political ideology. The casing from the bullet that killed Charlie Kirk was inscribed with the phrase, "Hey fascist, catch," followed by arrows. Others featured juvenile internet copypastas like "Notices bulges," or "What's this?" alongside lyrics from Bella Ciao, the Italian anti-fascist anthem. This juxtaposition is critically important. It reveals that for Tyler, this act of political violence was not entirely divorced from the gamified, ironic culture of the online spaces he inhabited. It was, in a warped sense, the ultimate expression of that culture, a real-world own against a perceived enemy, designed to be decoded and celebrated by his digital peers. He wasn't just killing a man, he was performing for an online audience, crafting a narrative of resistance that was equal parts deadly serious and terminally online. His communications also revealed his state of mind. In messages to associates, he stated, "I have the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it." When questioned, his justification was stark and absolute: some hatred cannot be negotiated with. This demonstrates a psyche that had moved beyond debate or persuasion into the realm of absolute, violent certainty. He had dehumanized his target to such an extent that murder became a logical, even necessary, solution. V. The unfathomable choice, betrayal as duty. The aftermath of the assassination on September 10th was a maelstrom of national media attention and an intense FBI manhunt. When grainy surveillance footage of the suspect began to circulate, the Robinson family's world imploded for the second time in 24 hours. Matt Robinson, Tyler's father, saw the footage and recognized the unmistakable gait and posture of his son. In that moment, he faced a moral dilemma of biblical proportions: the duty of a father to protect his child versus the duty of a citizen to uphold justice and prevent further harm. His decision to confront Tyler directly is an act of almost unimaginable courage. The conversation that followed was brief and devastating. Matt's simple, heartbreaking question, "Tyler, is this you? This looks like you," was met not with denial, but with a confirmation that plunged the family into an abyss. Tyler's reported response, that he would rather kill himself than be taken alive, revealed a person who had fully committed to the ideology of the act but had given no thought to the personal consequences. He was prepared for martyrdom, not for accountability. What happened next is what sets this story apart. The family did not panic. They did not help him flee or hide evidence. Instead, they mobilized not to protect Tyler, but to manage the situation and ensure a peaceful surrender. They contacted a unique family friend who bridged their two needed worlds, a youth pastor who could provide spiritual counsel and a court security officer with direct links to the U.S. Marshals Service. This choice was strategic and profound. They were seeking not an escape route, but a path to justice that would prevent more bloodshed. This decision, praised by behavioral experts as almost unheard of, came at a devastating cost. They were consciously and voluntarily initiating the process that would lead to their son's imprisonment, likely for life, or even his execution. They were choosing the abstract concept of justice over the primal instinct of familial protection. In doing so, they became paragons of civic virtue but also entered a permanent state of grief and trauma. They lost their son twice over, first to the ideology that turned him into a killer, and second to the justice system they themselves invoked. 6. The aftermath: a family shattered, a community in mourning. The consequences of their choice continue to unfold. The family has been subjected to intense public scrutiny, online harassment from those who see Tyler as a hero or a monster, and the crushing weight of what-ifs and missed signs. Their home in St. George, once a symbol of suburban stability, became a macabre tourist attraction, surrounded by police tape and media satellites. Neighbors like Kristen Schwirmer, who had known Tyler since elementary school, expressed the community's collective disbelief. He was always very quiet. He was very smart. He had just a real mellow personality. Never caused any problems. I don't know who his friends were as of now. Her words echoed the confusion of an entire town that prides itself on its values and safety. Now forced to reconcile that identity with the fact that it produced a political assassin, the family's cooperation with the prosecution is ongoing and adds another layer to their agony. By providing evidence of Tyler's hatred at the dinner table, his access to firearms despite his grandmother's denials, and his changing behavior, they are actively helping the state build a case that could see their own son put to death. Every piece of evidence they offer is a betrayal etched in pain, a reaffirmation of their terrible choice to value a larger justice above their own blood. 7. A cautionary tale for a digital age. The story of Tyler Robinson and his family is more than a tragedy, it is a stark warning. It forces us to confront the potent and often invisible power of online radicalization. It demonstrates that violence is not always born of obvious deprivation or overt instability, but can fester in the quiet corners of seemingly normal lives, nurtured by digital communities that operate with impunity. The Robinson family's broken silence is their final act of public service. By speaking out, they are highlighting the warning signs they missed: the increased isolation, the withdrawal into online spaces, the adoption of rigid, black and white political rhetoric, and the subtle erosion of empathy. They are urging other families to look closer, to ask harder questions, and to engage with the digital worlds their children inhabit. Tyler Robinson's journey from a quiet boy in St. George to the assassin of Charlie Kirk is a dark journey through the heart of modern America. It is a story about the fragility of identity, the seductive danger of digital extremism, and the terrifying speed at which a life can be corrupted. But it is also a story about the breathtaking power of moral courage. In their most devastating moment, faced with an impossible choice, the Robinson family chose the painful path of truth. They looked their son in the eye and, recognizing the monster he had become, decided that the man they loved had to be stopped, even if it meant they would be the ones to do it. Their silence is broken, but their grief, and the complex legacy of their choice, will endure forever.